Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. I am really excited because this is a special episode. This is something I have not done before. Amy Kapolnek is a founder of the fwrd Group. She's a fractional CMO and such an incredible resource for emerging brands, consumer brands to really dial in their marketing. And so we're going to have a special episode. Amy, I'm so happy you're here. And we're going to nerd out about marketing for the new year, what to think about for the holiday season, and making sure you're thinking of things in a hopefully new perspective. So, Amy, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Kelly. I am so excited to be here. I can't even tell you what an honor it is. I have been following Emerging Brands podcast, and so when we connected, it was such a fit, and it's so excited to be chatting with you.
That's so cool to hear. Honestly, hearing people like yourself listening to my podcast, it feels very full circle. And so I'm really excited to dive in. It's a bit of a different type of style show today that really hones in on marketing and really helping founders who listen to this show think about, like I said, the holiday season, 2025. I can't believe it's already 2025 around the corner,
I know.
thinking about common mistakes. But before we dive into all the nitty gritty, I would love to hear your background, how you started your career, how you became a fractional CMO. I think that's a really interesting piece, and how you started your own agency, the fwrd Group. So walk us through your background.
Yeah. So for the last 18 years, my entire career, I have primarily worked with emerging consumer brands on their brand launch and growth strategies. I started in fashion wholesale and marketing. Absolutely, Kelly, I can't even tell you, I hated it. Absolutely
Really?
hated it. It's not for me. I feel like to me it wasn't very authentic.
Mm,
And I did not enjoy it in any way. Fashion can be very toxic. Anyone that's worked in it knows that to the core. And so I was like, I
yes.
cannot do this for the rest of my life. So I decided to leave and um started freelancing basically. That was like my first venture really into owning my own business per se, was freelancing. And I was doing that as a content marketer. And that led to a position at a magazine that focused solely on emerging brands, which was such a fit because when I was a fashion wholesale and marketer, I was only working on emerging contemporary brands. So led to that position, covering emerging brands. I was going to, the fashion shows, and it was so glamorous. Came a point in time when I decided to leave. So I'm not sure if people know this, but there were a lot of changes going on at this time in the publishing world. I call it the bust era.
And what
And
what
there was
time period was this?
this was like 2015, 14, 15, 16. I would
Okay.
say it kind of like ramped up over the years where like publications were closing left and right. And because the publication I was at was more indie, even though we were the publication in emerging brands, we were still indie. And I just kind of knew, it was only a matter of time before the closure came knocking at our door. And so thankfully, I still was freelancing throughout my entire time at the magazine. And so it wasn't too big of a leap for me to jump out of my executive director role at the magazine and into the fwrd Group, my current business, because I already had a handful of clients. So here we are about 10 years later. I technically, I always say I started the fwrd Group more in like 2014, but I didn't go full time at it until 2016, 17, something like that. And so here we are, the fwrd Group.
Incredible.
I know we get to, I really love what we do because we get to work with emerging brands. I mean, I myself, as you as well, we are small businesses. And so we really know what these emerging brands are going through as a small business. And so we're able to come in and truly be a partner to, work with them on their strategic planning and their marketing execution and act as fractional CMO. Um, and really just provide these brands with like the growth strategy and the business advisory that they need to increase customer volume, expand market presence, and maximize revenue and hopefully get acquired right down the road.
Right. If someone is new to the term fractional CMO and they're maybe starting off in their founder journey and they're like, wait, this is a new word. What the hell is a fractional CMO? What's like a good way for people to understand the role of a fractional CMO? And like what
Yeah,
stage of their brand and business do they work with a fractional CMO?
this is such a great question. And I actually get asked it a lot, even through like from potential clients. So, a fractional CMO is a fractional chief marketing officer, and it basically is a part time C suite executive at a fraction of the cost, at a fraction of the time. So, you still get the benefit of having this extremely knowledgeable expert, but at a price point typically that smaller emerging brands or businesses can't afford. And I
That
would say,
yes.
oh, I was just going to answer yours. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
I think I see, typically, I see brands in year two really
Okay.
needing a fractional CMO. And what's interesting is that at the fwrd Group, we offer something called fractional marketing team. And I swear we're the ones that invented this, or at least I like to think that.
Tell us
And
more.
that is right. You get an entire marketing team as well as myself as your CMO for a fraction of the cost because you're not getting them full time. You're
Right.
basically employing them for a fraction of the time, fraction of the cost. And it really is extremely beneficial to emerging brands who maybe don't have the funding or the resources to bring on a full-time marketer or want to keep everything in one house, right? Where one person knows or one company knows the brand. It's really hard, for founders to I would say organize and guide and keep everything going in the right path when you have one freelancer here, an agency here, like it just gets to be too much. And so that's I think what attracts our clients, the emerging brands, to the fractional marketing team service that we offer.
That absolutely makes sense. And when you say team, who else? So it's yourself and if just to help people also understand of like this really cool team that could come in to support them. What does that look like?
So we run a really small and lean team, and there's a reason for that. One, we have to keep overhead low so that we can make sure that our rates are affordable for emerging brands. We are not
Right.
big agencies. We do not charge huge, retainers or project fees because we understand that that's just not within budget right now. They're not enterprise clients. Um, so it also helps us be agile. So anyone that has ever owned a emerging consumer brand knows that things are changing constantly and you
Right.
need a team that can also change constantly. And when you have a big team, you can't move as quickly on things. So it's myself. We have a director of operations and business development who is my right hand, and she is incredible. I love her to pieces. So then we have a team of marketing specialists. So social media, Shopify, Klaviyo. So that would be like e-commerce, email, as well as analytics and like data. And then we employ also like contractors that are in our network. So that could be anywhere from like a website developer to a brand strategist to a graphic designer. et cetera, et cetera.
Very cool. Thank you for walking
Yeah,
us through that because
of
I
course.
think this will be really helpful again for a founder who's in the early stages of thinking about their path ahead because where I am usually working with people is the really early days, but also I love helping them understand the options as they grow so they don't have so much anxiety about
Yes.
growing, right? They're like, sometimes founders are like hesitant about taking steps forward because they feel like, okay, I'm going to max out really soon. Like, I'm a human, I have a family, or I have a fulfilling life. And they're like, I don't want to give
Yeah,
that all up. So I love talking to people like yourself who could say, okay, when you get to this stage of growth, this is available. And so I appreciate you walking us through that. Okay.
absolutely. And I think also, we're very interesting in the way that we work because, we customize every service. And so what's on our website is not, just cut and dry, which is a lot of other, I would say marketing consulting firms. We often get clients who are like, hey, this is my budget for this quarter, or this is my budget for the year. Like, can you work with us on this? And we understand it might not be a fractional CMO. We understand it might not be a fractional marketing team, but maybe it's consulting, monthly consulting, or maybe it's a sprint, or maybe we're just creating, a key marketing strategy for them. And then we're walking them through it, so they can execute with their team or by themselves. So yeah, I think there's a lot of options nowadays. And like you said, I don't think that founders should sacrifice their personal lives and their comforts to a point, because that's what makes us keep going, right?
Right. When you feel
Those,
good about what you're
yes.
building and how you're building it. Something that comes up often in conversations with founders that I have, and just myself, I'm always looking to learn and listen to insights from experts like yourself. I would love to hear some common marketing mistakes that you are seeing from emerging brands that you're like, okay, let's not do this anymore, everyone. Like, what would you love to make sure an
If
emerging
if
brand founder would listen to or know before they get to your door possibly, and you're like, okay, please keep this in mind while you're building?
if I could shout this from the rooftops, I really would. And that would be, do not rush into retail. Focus on building your own D2C channels first. I'm not sure where this idea of having, or obsession of having to be in retail came from. I mean, I know it's a dream to see your product on shelves of Sephora and Ulta and Target and, all the department stores. But I think COVID-19 really reminded us of an important lesson of that you have to be omni-channel right now.
Right.
And brands need to own all or part their revenue streams, their customer base, their community. And so I always say, like, yes, let's build out a retail strategy. Let's build that into our plan. But we need to be putting more of a priority into your D2C foundation. Um, and there's not only that it's not only because it benefits the brand, but it's also because retailers are looking for brands with established communities, solid revenue streams, a presence that they can capitalize on. When you're approaching some of these bigger retailers, they're asking you, like, do you have the funds? Are you fundraising? Have you fundraised? How much have you raised? What is your marketing strategy? We want to see it. What's your community look like? They're looking at your social media because they want to tap into that. That's their whole strategy and their whole plan and why they work. So I always say, like, focus on building your community, focus on your home, focus on your customer base, focus on increasing your data through through your owned channels,
Mm-hmm.
like email, e-commerce, social media, because those channels are also going to give you direct access to your customers, and they'll allow you to grow more authentically, but gather valuable insights about your audience and the products they're looking for, which will then help you develop more products that they will buy, which will increase revenue and make you just more attractive to a retailer. So I always say, like, if you're in the first 2 years of starting your brand, like, please limit how much you're pouring into trade shows and events, hoping for retail placement, because I cannot tell you how many brands I have seen done that. And then they're left with no real marketing initiatives or traction because they don't have any funds or resources left to actually put into marketing, to building their community. So I say, like, invest that budget into building, you know, your online presence, cultivating loyal customers who will follow your brand through it all. And then once you have a footing or a foundation in that, then start courting these retailers. And you'll be surprised that a lot of them will start coming to you.
That's a really great point. And I think that something that you touched upon that it's been in the zeitgeist, but I think that so many brand founders still don't know what it necessarily means when you say around building community, right? And what does that really mean? And I think it's obviously shifted over the years, but when you're speaking to this in the year 2024 going into 2025, can you share with founders some examples of what that could look like, or best practices around that, just helping them connect those dots? Because I think sometimes people just think, oh, building community online, yes, that's really important. But looking at it big picture, it's not just your followers, but it's a bigger play in building a brand.
Yeah, and I think there's different ways you can build community depending on what type of brand you are, depending
Right.
on where your audience is. So, for instance, if you, and I'm not talking about beauty, wellness, medical, aesthetic brands, the brands that I work with, but this is now just general because I know that emerging consumer brands of all walks of life listen to your podcast. I think it's, social media is the first and is your first I would not say defense, but your first channel that you really need to go after, right?
Right.
Everybody's on social media. So, but finding which platform they're on.
Right.
So we know that Gen Zs, they favor TikTok over Instagram. So, okay, so we should be obviously doubling down on TikTok. We need to create content that is going to interest them and engage them so that they're commenting, they're liking, they're having conversations with each other. And you're also in on those conversations. So I think,
Mm,
a lot of brands don't have the bandwidth to be creating those conversations and comments, or maybe they don't understand what type of content they need to create to start those conversations. But when people are moved enough, or when people feel, and when I say moved enough, it could be even meaning like feel connected enough to your content, they're going to comment, especially nowadays where it's, extraordinarily common for people to comment. Brands are not leveraging that by coming in and having a conversation with them. A lot of times they will just let them have the conversation, or they won't do anything with the comments. But it's really crucial to respond to the comments, ask questions, DM people, encourage people to DM them back. um IG came out with IG channels
right.
a few, what, like last year,
I think
2
last
years
year,
ago
yeah.
now. And that is also a really great way to encourage, community. In-person events where your customer base is a phenomenal way to create more community. And I think brand ambassadors really help with that because they can also have satellite events. If you can't be there. So for instance, let's say you're targeting LA, Miami, New York, and you want to have these events, but the team just can't be at all three places. Like you can utilize brand ambassadors to host these events for you
Right.
so that then there's more community building on a local level. Um, Again, if you're, I'm just speaking this in general, Slack or Roblox or Discord have become very popular platforms to create community because you're bringing people together and then they're just organically having conversations. The
Mhm.
simple fact is people want to be accepted. It, it's just it's a humane trait. We all want to be accepted. We all want to be loved. And so if you can, as a brand, give that to people, that is where the loyalty comes in.
That's a great point, especially in the year 2024, where people are really craving that,
Yeah.
especially now, through the pandemic and just how everyone's worlds got turned around. They're really craving this community.
Yes.
When you're thinking about social media and maybe some other things for brands to do or not do, is there anything else on your please don't do this list
Yeah.
when thinking about social?
Yeah. So I hold a lot of unconventional beliefs, I would say, for emerging brands. And it's because I've been in the space long enough to see what works and what doesn't work. And
Right,
yes, there's, you have unicorns that are going to, go against the grain. But generally speaking, I always tell my clients to avoid social media advertising and instead focus on search engine marketing. It's also called SEM. Um, it's super tempting to jump into social media advertising when you're trying to grow your brand because you see everybody else doing it around you. But for an emerging consumer brand, it is extremely expensive. And quite often, it's an ineffective strategy. And the reason being is you are competing in a very saturated market with big players who have the capital to just dominate social media advertising. We're talking
right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million budgets for just Black Friday, Cyber Monday, um, and just no way that an emerging brand can compete with that. I would even say, even if they're funded, you still will see investors say, well, we're not going to give you money to just go give it to Mark Zuckerberg. Like
Right.
they don't view that as a strategy anymore. They want to see better ROI. And sadly, with social media advertising, when you're an emerging brand, you don't see a good ROI like at all. And I also want to make a point that consumers are actually like ad fatigued. And so that's another reason why I think we've been seeing diminished returns, or diminished ROI, we would say, return on
Right.
investment, from brands that are emerging because they don't have the brand recognition. And consumers, social media users, they don't want to be bombarded with an ad. They want to look at funny content. They want to be taken away from their real world for a minute. And so that is why I always say, like, invest in search engine marketing and local brand partnerships, because then you can reach customers who are actively searching for products like yours. And the strategy ends up being more targeted and measurable compared to like social media ads. And I think it also like allows you to understand your audience better and optimize your marketing and all those good things.
Amy, I'm so happy you just said that because this is something that I think about all the time. And it is somewhat against the grain of what
Yes.
most people are saying, but I agree with you 1,000%. When you're talking about search engine marketing, can you give some context to what that looks like for someone who is like, okay, like I'm
Yeah.
cool with switching gears here. And also, that's not the only lever or strategy anymore by any stretch of the imagination. But what does that search engine marketing look like? If you were like, okay, here's an example of that.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I would say you would need to invest in SEO, which is search engine optimization. And
Right,
typically that requires brands to go after keywords that consumers are searching for. And you will take those keywords and you will spread them throughout your entire website. You can also do it on social media because uh, search engine platforms like Google do search social media because they do
right,
have a website. And you want to sprinkle those in places that I always say Google because Google is just the biggest platform that
right.
Google loves the most. So you want to say like meta descriptions and alt tags and headlines and URLs and et cetera, et cetera. You then can, if you want to, which I do tend to push my clients towards, you then can invest some of your marketing dollars into bidding on those keywords. So when someone searches like facial moisturizer for women in their 50s, let's say you want to pop up, right, as sponsored, right? If you want to pop up first or on the first page, you could try to bid on that to be placed higher. Um, Longer tail keywords are key here because again, you are going to be competing with larger brands who um, are going after facial moisturizer, and you just might not, have the budget to do that. Another one is shopping display ads. Those have become really big in Google. So I don't know if anyone has seen when you type in, moisturizer, and then you'll see like a shoppable queue like
Yes.
above, like you'll see a bunch of different products. That's also SEM. And then there's the old school, pay per click, PPC. I don't 100%, lean into that, but it is effective for some brands.
Thank you for breaking that down. Again,
Of
I knew that
course.
this episode was going to be a special edition on marketing and everyone getting their pen and paper. I'm personally taking notes, so I'm soaking up everything that you're saying. This is especially important as we go into holiday season. I'm going to make sure I release this episode by next week because it's that important for people to listen to. When we're going into holiday season, you touched upon Black Friday. It feels like it's always changing. It's getting, sooner and sooner that brands are sending out campaigns. What are
Yep.
some last minute things, especially for an emerging brand, that they could do to maybe stay competitive or to leverage the fact that they're emerging during this time? I would love to hear your thoughts of an emerging brand going into the holiday season.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I would say make sure you have a strategy. There's a lot of brands that I see try to maximize revenues in Q4, specifically around Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which does typically tend to be the largest revenue producing quarter of the year. But they're doing it without a strategy. And the problem with that is that you have no roadmap, you have no calendar, you don't know when things should be published and when you should launch, and it just becomes chaotic, and then you end up not having the returns that you want. So I'd say first and
Right.
foremost, make sure you have a strategy of what you want to do and what you want to focus on. And when you're building that strategy, don't look at these big competitors. I wouldn't even say look at your competitors at all. Be hyper focused on your objectives, your marketing objectives and your business objectives for the holiday season. um, Next, I would say as an initiative would be you've got to make sure your e-commerce is optimized. So we already kind of touched on that a little bit with the
Right.
SEM, but e-commerce is projected to be the primary outlet where consumers are making purchases. And so you need to make sure that your website is um, has all the relevant information. It's easy to purchase. There's not 17 different steps. It's not confusing. it has your brand story, your best-selling products. It has testimonials. Um, I always say this is like one of the virtually quickest, easiest, and free ways um, to get in front of consumers. So there's no rhyme or reason in the world that we live in that a brand should not have their e-commerce optimized. Um, from a product standpoint, I suggest creating sets and bundles with a small discount in an effort to, push customers to try new products or increase the average order value. We call that AOV. Another tactic to increase conversion is to make sure that you have videos on your product listings.
Oh, that's a good
If
one.
you, yes, and if you can have video testimonials, that is like the holy grail because social proof is the word right now. I also suggest, and this is more for luxury brands, to adding buy now, pay later because it
Ooh.
encourages customers who might not, you know, want to spend a couple $100, but would like it to be spread across a few months. Like it encourages them to try the brand. And with the BNPL industry, we've seen a significant increase in credit extension in the last few years. So this holiday season, it's projected to continue to surge. I mentioned social proof being everything, and it'll be a
Right.
massive driver this holiday season. So really utilize that UGC, user generated content, and brand ambassadors, not influencers, brand ambassadors. There's a difference
Yes.
to secure that social proof. I think this also allows you to show your products in motion, and just overall, it's more affordable for an emerging brand. Um, and lastly, I think I would say to separate your abandoned browser and cart automated emails. And the reason being is because it allows you to deliver the message that matches the shopper's journey while also providing a bit of urgency, like, hey, the sale was limited or it's ending tomorrow. Like, get in on it now or you're going to miss your opportunity. And we see that this really works.
That is, again, such a tangible tip that someone could be doing right now as they're
Right now.
listening to this podcast. Be like, let me make sure I have it on. I realized a client of mine, I thought it was turned on and it wasn't. I was like, ooh, we have to turn this
Yeah.
on. So I just went in their website and did it for them. But it's something so simple that genuinely makes an impact, and I believe it was, like, within the week, we saw that someone had abandoned cart, and then their order went through, they got the email reminder, and it was, like, $100 worth of product that they bought, which is awesome for a small business and,
Yes.
a consumer packaged good, $100 worth of products is a substantial day, so or order, I should say, so it's little things like that sometimes fall at the bottom of our to-do list, but truly are impactful for growing the actual business. So I'm really glad that you said that. Um,
And just to
yeah,
add like a tip onto
please.
that really quick, because I know we are getting at time, but email marketing is still the largest revenue producing channel in marketing. And so I look at automations as almost passive income. And that's kind of what I tell my clients all the time. I'm like,
I
let's
like
let's
that.
get us some passive income.
I like
Yes,
that.
it's not a set it and forget it. You do need to monitor it and alter it. But a lot of times it is a set it and forget it for a moment in time. And I also think that, yes, these initiatives individually might not move the needle, but when you put them all together, they really can make a big impact, like you said. And so, yeah, I hope this is helpful.
That's super helpful. And I think that also goes back to your point of having a strategy that it's not just one thing that's going to turn everything around or make it explode. It's
Yeah,
really this collective momentum of all the small things that you're doing that collectively makes that impact. When a
exactly.
founder is looking at 2025, what are some things or one major thing that you want to make sure is on their radar looking at next year?
I know. I feel so bad for founders right now because we're talking about holiday. We're talking about 2025,
It's a
and
lot.
these poor founders are like, oh my gosh, But promise you, we will get through it all. So some of the strategies that I'm predicting that we will see in 2025 is number one, we're going to continue to see AI being integrated into marketing in a slew of different ways, from customer service to data analytics to content creation, hyper personalization, and I think customer acquisition methods. I think we'll also see a continued priority shift to advancing customer insights through, again, a slew of different data driven marketing initiatives. Um, Understanding the customer has been a staple of marketing goal. That's our job. If we
Right.
don't understand, we cannot market um, correctly, appropriately. And so the more ways we can get that data, the more ways we can understand the customer wants and needs is the better, because then we can just optimize our marketing strategy, marketing initiatives, campaigns to them that cater to them, even product development to them. And I think lastly, I think we're going to continue to see brands invest in creative ways to just acquire new customers in general. Like we talked about paid media, it's the cost is continuing to rise with the, with the return just being low.
Right.
Um, Again, with consumers just having ad fatigue, we've already seen brands be very creative in ways to acquire new customers or to have brand visibility. And I think we're just going to continue to see them push the envelope on that, whether that's partnerships, whether that's events. And I'm really excited for that, actually.
I'm excited for that too, because personally, that's my favorite aspect of when I'm
Yeah.
creating a brand strategy and helping a founder understand what is possible, of thinking a few steps
Hmm.
ahead and getting them excited about that. And I think that it's such a powerful way to get in front of new eyeballs and consumers that could be really into their brand, and it feels more authentic. It feels like a friend told you about it versus
Yeah.
being, cookied, and then now you bought something from an ad. So I love this. One other question before I let you go. When you talked about customer insights, can you give
Yeah.
an example or two, just to again help a founder understand what exactly that means?
Yeah. So common customer insights could be anything from interests. So are they interested in running? Are they interested in travel? What are they interested in, even outside of what your brand produces? Um, it could be wants, needs, desires, values. So now we're tapping in really to like subconscious. It could be unmet needs. So I I give um I give the example of for beauty, a woman who is about to have an empty nest, and she's worried, like, okay, well, are me and my husband, are we going to connect again? We've been so focused on working and raising the family, it's just going to be us. Like, are we going to have things in common still? That is a deep worry, a deep maybe desire, right? That her and her husband will connect. And you might think, okay, well, what does a beauty brand have to do with that? A lot, because the beauty brand can give her the confidence and the reassurance that yes, you will be okay. And there's ways to do that. So those are the insights I'm talking about. And those
That's a
take
great
a lot of
example.
time to acquire. Yeah. So it's not, obviously if you're selling on Shopify, you can look in the back end and see, okay, they purchased this vitamin C serum, in September. And you can make the assumption, oh, okay, they probably, have hyperpigmentation and they're trying to get rid of it. But we're talking about deeper insights, again, like the wants, the needs, the values. I mean, the interests obviously help too, because that's, going to be our first way in. Typically, you take these insights and then you will create content, create strategy around like a funnel. You don't see brands often like going for like, the jugular, like we're going to go right in and talk about, you don't know if you're going to connect with your husband anymore. Like, no, we want to like
Right.
subtly get into
Right.
it. And so you do need those more superficial socio demographics before you start getting into what we call socio demographics.
Thank you
Yeah.
for breaking that down. That was very
Yeah, of
helpful.
course.
And I think, again, very tangible. You could wrap your head around it and you're like, okay, it's a lot, but I could do it. And so when
Yes.
someone is now thinking about their marketing strategy for the rest of the year, going into 2025, what does it look like working with you and your team?
Yes. So we do have limited availability on our roster right now. And so we are, actively seeking brand partners that are the right fit for both of us. You can either connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Amy Kapolnek. You can also submit an inquiry through our website. You can also reach out to our director of operations and business development. Her name is Karina, via email, which I will make sure Kelly lists in the episode recap, and you can reach out to her directly. Yeah,
Awesome,
it's
Amy.
easy.
This was great. I honestly loved nerding out with you for the last half an hour. I could talk to you truly for hours. But thank you for
Same.
thank you for breaking this down. This was really practical, tangible, insightful, and I think it helps a founder see a different perspective and also know that they don't have to do it all by themselves, but knowing what they need to then fill in those gaps and the right person to help them fill in those gaps. And so, to the founders listening, I hope that this was a really helpful episode of helping you think about marketing, closing out the year on a positive note, heading into the new year. And Amy, thank you again for all of your incredible insights and knowledge. This was awesome.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I love chatting with you, and I hope to do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.